Hi, welcome to Autocad Bytes. Today we're going to be looking at 2D snaps. If you'd like to work along with this project, this tutorial, please go to the website and download the associated files. So what are object snaps? Well, snaps are helpers, and they allow the user to accurately attach one object to another, and they're one of the most important aspects of drawing in AutoCAD. Having an accurate drawing makes dimensioning a breeze and gives other people confidence in your drawing. Now, as you can see from the screen, there's 13 different 2D object snaps. We'll go through each one of them in turn, looking at them. We'll also then open up the settings dialog box, which will look at the marker icon so you can recognize which snap you'll be snapping to in the drawing. And we'll also have a look at the object snap tracking, which allows you to track along a path of an object based on other object snap points. A very useful tool. Okay, let's get started. Okay, let's discuss why we use object snaps. Let's zoom into this endpoint of this line here. If I zoom as close as I can, I'm just going to use the middle mouse button to roll her in as close as I can, just rolling it forward to zoom in. I'm going to type in L for line, and I'm going to get as close to this endpoint as possible and click to begin the line, and then click somewhere else, press enter to finish the line command. Now the idea was, no matter how close I get, and I'm just zooming in again now, get to the endpoint of a line, I will never snap to the endpoint. This is why we use object snaps. So I just use E for erase and get rid of that line, and then I'm just going to roll the ball out to zoom back out using the middle mouse button. So we can turn on some default snap settings to make our life a little bit easier, and if we go down to this icon down here in the bottom of the screen where the object snap is, F3, and right click, we can go to settings. You can also see we have a series of snaps here we can choose from. Choose settings, and I would say by default set up endpoint, midpoint, center and intersection. These will get you out of most sticky situations in AutoCAD, and we can look at the other ones in turn. Click OK. Now when I do the line command, L enter, you can see that the square endpoint marker snap appears when I get close to the endpoint of a line. Now I don't even have to be too close to the endpoint, I can click there and it will snap to the endpoint of that line. Click and enter to get out of the command. Similarly for the midpoint command, let's just pan across here. If I do L enter for line, as I get close to the midpoint of a line, you can see the triangle snap, the marker snap appears, and if I click, it'll snap to the midpoint of a line. Okay, so we've got midpoint. We also have the center point set. So center point's a little bit different because if you hover around the edge of the line, then the snap will appear, and if you go to the center, it will also appear. So either in this case. So again, escape L for line, enter, and just hover on the edge and snap, and it'll click, and it'll snap to the center. Likewise with arcs, if you L enter, you can see a little inferred marker appear across here. It's actually snapping to the endpoint and midpoint of this arc. But if I move back to where that little red cross is, that will give me the center, and it'll pop up with a little tooltip to say center if you're not sure. So click again, and I've now snapped to the center point of that arc, and then to the midpoint of the arc. Intersection was the other one that we had on automatically. Again, I might just turn off midpoint or maybe move these two lines so they're not joining at the midpoint, because it'll defer to the midpoint snap. So again, line, L, enter, endpoint, midpoint. You can see I've still got a midpoint there. So what I'll do is I'll just move that line across to the right a little bit. There we go. And L, enter. Now because the midpoints are over here, where the two lines intersect, you'll see it comes up with a cross. So I can snap to the intersection of those two lines. I'll just turn ortho mode off, which is this F8 button on your keyboard, or this icon here, which just allows me to freely move the cursor around and click to move over there. Okay, so that's the midpoint, endpoint, midpoint, center and intersections looked at. The next snap I'd like to look at is the node snap. So if we pan in over here, the node snap is found in 3 AutoCAD objects that I know of. It's a text object, a point object, and a dimension style or a dimension object. I haven't actually got the the automatic snap turned on at the moment, but what we can do is we can access snaps on the fly. And to do this, we shift right click. So hold down the shift button and right click, and you'll see a whole load of snaps appear in a floating menu. So let's first of all start the line command, so L enter, and then shift right click, and we'll choose node from the list. And you can see now the node tooltip is appearing on the point object, on the text object, and down here on the dimension object. So I can draw a line between the node on the dimension and the node on the text object. Okay. Not often that you'd need to use the node snap, so that's why we don't tend to turn it on. Next one we'll look at is a quadrant. Now the quadrant are the four axes of a circle, if that makes sense. So L for line, enter, shift right click, and quadrant, shift right click, and instead of clicking on the object you can use the capital letter next to it. So Q for quadrant will do the same thing. It just stops, it allows you to do it a little bit quicker without moving the mouse. So shift right click, sorry, first of all L, enter, shift right click Q, shift right click Q, and there we have snap to a quadrant. Extension, this is very similar to object snap tracking, in the point that what it does is it takes an existing axis and interprets where those 2 points would intersect. So I want to draw a point which is sort of about here, where these 2 lines are going to intersect. So L for line, shift right click, extension. Now what you need to do is just hover over the end point, and it'll pick up the little green cross, little green plus there, and again hover, and as I move up you'll see these tracking lines appear, and when I get to where they intersect it'll show the extension tooltip saying the angle of 0 and the extension angle of 90. So click on there and there we have it. We've snapped to the extension of the 2 lines. This is an Autocad block. Now I've created this before. If I go I for insert, and from the list you'll see there's a block here called insertion, which is a little icon there showing, and if I click OK it'll insert, and you can see where my cursor is in the middle of that Autocad block. It's in the center of this circle and triangle. So what I want to do is I could snap to, so L for line, I could snap to the center of this object, but what I'm going to do is right click and choose insertion, which is the insertion point of blocks. And you can see as I get to the click on the block somewhere, you'll see this double sort of square link, chain link effect. That's the insertion snap. Again, very rarely used. I don't think I've ever used the snap to insertion of block. Snap perpendicular, very useful. Again, if I draw a line from say the nearest, which is a point anywhere on this line, and there's my midpoint, there's my end point. If I shift right click and go perpendicular, I will snap at 90 degrees to that line. Very, very useful. Next one is tangent. Tangent's a bit of a tricky one because what it does is it doesn't immediately give you the snap point. It's got what's called a deferred snap. So I'll create a line, enter, and shift right click, tangent. Now you can see this, the 3 dotted lines just after the tangent icon, and it's telling me that it's a deferred tangent snap. Now what that means is it doesn't know where that snap's going to be until I tell it where the other point is. And let's say we'll choose another tangent of this circle. Okay, so if I click tangent of that circle, that line now is tangential to both circles. If I just generate a line out here, shift right click, tangent, it doesn't need to be deferred this time because it knows the first point, and it'll just snap to the tangent of that circle.